Hey guys, stick around for the whole video because although there are a few you know, and it's the first part in a series, I'm gonna do a sneak peek for the surprises you can expect in the next two at the end. This was a ton of fun digging around in mythology for snake lore, but it is a bit long. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the snakes of Greek mythology. Adidae. Oh boy. When I set out to do this video, I knew the ancient fascination with snakes went deep. But the more that I dug into it, the more I realized that if I were to include every deity with associations with snakes and every partially snake being, this video would be over an hour long. So I'm going to focus primarily on beings that are wholly snaky or had large portions of their bodies that were serpentine for this video, because there's a lot. There will be at least 2 more videos on the topic, one for beings whose bodies were partly snaky and one for gods who had strong associations with snakes or snakes as a part of their cultus. If the ancient Norse could be said to have a fascination with dogs and wolves, the ancient Greeks very much could say the same for snakes. Ancients would let the snakes hang out in their houses because they would eat mice and rats that would otherwise destroy their crops. Many deities had associations with snakes, and at least one deity, or high spirit depending on your theology, was largely depicted as and worships as a snake. Many temples allowed snakes to wander about them freely. In other words, the ancients very much did not have the modern fear and revulsion of snakes, nor the Garden of Eden belief that they were automatically harmful. However, this doesn't mean that there weren't any evil snakes in Greek mythology. Far from it. We'll actually be getting into most of them in this video. Just that it wasn't a black and white thing, which is a refrain that seems to echo through all of the videos that I do on ancient myth. We'll be exploring the more positive snake representations primarily in later videos. With that, let's get into it. The python, also known as the Dracaean python, was a massive serpentine beast that was set by Gaia to guard the sacred oracle of Delphi, or rather to guard the area that became the sacred oracle of Delphi. In the Homeric hymn to Apollon, also known as Homeric hymn 3, we hear the story of how the oracle at Delphi was claimed by Apollon by slaying the python with an arrow shot from afar. This creature was said to consort with Thyphoes, a creature with a human-like upper body and many snakes in his lower half, and together they had many monstrous children. The story goes that Apollon went looking about all of Greece to find a suitable spot for his temple, but kept running into issues with each initial spot he found. The last one, which he staked his claim on, irritated Hera, who either bore Thyphoes alone without Zeus, or Gaia did, and Hera just sent him to be the monster that haunted the area Apollon wanted his temple built in. The different versions of the myth tell different stories. Here is specifically where he's mentioned in Homeric hymn 3. Straight away, large-eyed queenly Hera took Thyphoes, and bringing one evil thing to another such, gave in to the Dracana, also known as the python, and she received him. And this Typhon used to work great mischief among the fabled tribes of men. Whosoever met the Dracana, the day of doom would sweep him away, until the Lord Apollon, who deals death from afar, shot a strong arrow at her. Then she, rent with bitter pangs, lay drawing great gasps for breath and rolling about the place. An awful noise swelled up, unspeakable, as she writhed continuously this way and that among the wood, so she left her life, breathing it forth in blood. Then Phoebus Apollon boasted over her, "Now rot here upon the soil that feeds man. You at least shall live no more, to be a fell bane to men who eat the fruit of the all-nourishing earth, and who will bring hither perfect hecatombs. Against cruel death neither Typhus shall avail you, no the ill-famed Chimera, but here shall the earth and shining Hyperion make you rot." Thus said Phoebus, exulting over her, and the darkness covered her eyes, and the holy strength of Helios made her rot away there. Wherefore the place is now called Pytho, and men call the Lord Apollon by another name, Pythian, because on that spot the power of piercing Helios made the monster rot away. Fun fact, the fumes at the oracle were said to be the corpse of the python, still forever rotting by Helios and Apollon's combined powers. The Kolkean Dragon was a giant serpent who guarded the Golden Fleece in Ares' sacred grove. What happened to it depends on the version of the story that you read. In one version of the story, from Pseudo Apollodorus, Jason's girlfriend, the witch Medea, puts the dragon to sleep with drugs so he can fetch the fleece without harm. According to Pindar, however, Jason attempted to sneak into the grove to no avail, as the serpent was literally carrying the Golden Fleece, so he had to kill it. The last version of the story has no written record, but we do have a vase painting of it. In this version, he was first devoured by and disgorged by the giant serpent. We're not entirely sure what the circumstances surrounding that would have been. It was said that in the versions of the story where the serpent dies, King Aeetes had Jason harvest the teeth of the dragon after slaying it and then plant them in a field with a plow drawn by fire-breathing bulls. From these, warriors were said to have sprung up as full-grown adults from the earth. Similar to the Kolkean Dragon, we learn about the Esmanian Dragon, who was conquered by Cadmos when he sought a place to found the city of Thebes. It was said to have guarded a sacred spring belonging to Ares. Pseudo Apollodorus tells the story thus. Cadmos sent some of his men to fetch water from the spring of Ares, but a serpent, said by many to be a child of Ares, guarded the spring and destroyed most of those who had been sent. In outrage, Cadmos killed the serpent, and then, following the instructions of Athena, planted its teeth. From this sowing, there sprang from the earth armed men, called sportoi. These proceeded to kill each other, some in voluntary encounters and others in ignorance. Phereleides says that when Cadmos saw the armed men growing up from the earth, he threw stones at them, and they, believing that they were being hit by each other, started their fight. As for Cadmos, to atone for the deaths, he served Ares as a laborer for an everlasting year, for a year that was equal to 8 years now. The 5 that survived the fighting were said to have become the ancestral lords of Thebes. Since I mentioned Medea earlier, I'd be hard-pressed not to bring up that she was said to have a pair of flying serpents that drew her chariot. Later mythographers talked about the ways that she would use them in their spell work. They were said by Pseudo Apollodorus to have been gifts from her grandfather, the sun god Helios. They were also said to have been born of the blood of the Titans after the Titanomachy, and served her during the mischief she got up to after Jason betrayed her and cheated on her. Pretty badass if you ask me. The Learning Hydra was the 9-headed water serpent whose venomous fangs could, and later did, melt through the flesh of demigods. Most folks know that Hedeclase had to slay it as one of his 12 labors, and those of you who saw the video I did on him know that the venom he kept to solve a lot of his later problems eventually did him in. The conceit of this particular snaky critter was that his heads grew back every time someone cut them off, so he had to get some help cauterizing the stumps and then burying the last live head so it wouldn't regenerate the body back in order to do it in. Too bad keeping the Hydra's venom put Hedeclase out of his misery later on, though, or rather led him to the endless torture that led him to beg Philoctetes to light his funerary pyre in order to end it. During the course of the fight, the giant crab Karkinos came to the Hydra's aid, but Hedeclase just crushed it beneath his heel. As a reward for its service, though, Hera gave it a place in the sky as the constellation Cancer. Speaking of constellations, some folks think the constellation Draco is the Hydra, but that's not actually the case. That honor actually goes to the Hesperian Dragon, who had the name Ladon. It was assigned the task of guarding the golden apples of the Hesperides. You thought the Hydra was awesome with its 9 heads and regeneration? This bugger had 100. It also had the role of torturing the titan Atlas, who was punished by the gods with holding up the heavens for eternity. Hedeclase, as yet another one of his labors, ended up killing it, and much like Cancer, it got a constellation out of the deal. According to Hesiod, its parents were Phoros and Cato, the gods of hidden dangers of the deep, including sea monsters and sharks. They also happen to be the parents of Scylla the crab, Thusa, and Echidna. We'll talk about some of them in the next video. Later, writers assigned the Hesperian Dragon to guard Tartaros and torture the sins out of the victims sent there, though I'll spare you the graphic detail of what was said to happen to its victims. Okay, no one ever said that mythology doesn't get weird. The Dragon of the Serpentborn was a giant snake that guarded the sacred grove of Artemis in northwest Mysia. According to Aelian, in his work on mammals, the maiden Halia went into the grove and ended up, being taken by it. She gave birth to the first of the Opiogenes, which were said to be able to cure snake bites by merely touching them. They were a tribe of people whose name also meant born of serpents. At least according to Strabo, they had this miraculous power. And we're back at another city founding story. The Dracons of Rhodes were giant serpents that were said to have terrorized the islands of Rhodes. According to Diodorus Siculus, the land itself brought them up in order to murder a whole bunch of the people that settled there, so they sent men to Delos asking Apollon what to do about it. Apollon told them to call upon the hero Phobos of Thessaly and his companions to destroy the serpents, and commanded that the Rhodians give him a share of the land, where a hero cult was later established after Phobos' death. Wait, aren't basilisks supposed to have bird-like features? What gives, you might be thinking? Well, originally, according to Pliny, they were actually a particular species of North African snake with a highly unusual biology. I'll let him explain it in his own words. The basilisk serpent also has the ability to kill by sight like the catoblepas. It is native to the province of Carnica, not more than 12 inches long, and is adorned with a bright white marking on the head like a sort of diadem. It routs all snakes with its hiss, and does not move its body forward in manifold coils like other snakes, but advancing with its middle raised high. It kills bushes not only by its touch, but also by its breath, scorches up grass, and bursts rocks. Its effect on other animals is disastrous. It's believed that once one was killed with a spear by a man on horseback, and the infection rising through the spear killed not only the rider, but also the horse. Yet, to a creature as marvelous as this, indeed, kings have so often wished to see a specimen when safely dead, the venom of weasels is also fatal. So fixed is the decree of nature that nothing shall be without its match. They throw basilisks into weasels' holes, which are easily known by the foulness of the ground, and the weasels kill them with their stench and die themselves at the same time, and nature's battles is accomplished. Ancient biology was wild, huh? My question is, if somebody managed to stab one and the disease rose all the way up through the horse and the spear, how exactly did they throw them into pits? Maybe there was some kind of specialized equipment they use? Maybe they used weasel hides? I don't know, I digress. Alien brings us another bizarre treasure with the Phrygian Dragon, which is said to be a real species of giant serpent thought to inhabit the highlands of central Anatolia. Again, let's go ahead and hear about it from his words. But according to accounts from Phrygia, there are dracones in Phrygia too, and these grow to the length of 60 feet, and every day in midsummer creep out of their lairs. And on the banks of the river Rhydakos, while supporting the part of their coils on the ground, they raise the rest of their body and steadily and silently extending their neck, open their mouth and attract birds by their breath, as if it were by a spell. And the birds descend, feathers and all, into their stomach, drawn in by the draconis' breathing. In these singular practices, they continue until sundown. Next, the draconis hide and lie in wait for the flocks. As they return to the sheepfolds from the pasture, they fall upon them, and after a terrible slaughter, they have frequently killed the herdsmen as well, thus obtaining a generous and abundant feast. Well, that seems pretty dang dangerous and, also not very sustainable from what we understand about modern biology, but you know what? They often made these by tales that they heard from travelers, so it's not as though they just made all this up whole cloth, at least not as far as we know. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they heard some tall tales. So these were supposedly a breed of winged serpent that were said to guard the frankincense troves of Arabia. Herodotus, this time, gives us a pretty detailed account of them. There was a place in Arabia not far from the town of Buto where I went to learn about the winged serpents. When I arrived there, I saw innumerable bones and backbones of serpents, many heaps of backbones, great and small and even smaller. This place where the backbones lay scattered is where a narrow mountain pass opens into the Great Plain, which adjoins to the plain of Egypt. Winged serpents are said to fly from Arabia at the beginning of spring and making for Egypt, but the ibis birds encounter the invaders in this pass and kill them. The Arabians say that the ibis is greatly honored by the Egyptians for this service, and the Egyptians give the same reason for honoring these birds. So yeah, apparently, somehow the winged serpents, I don't know why they'd be flying there. Most migratory birds fly either to escape winter conditions or to breed. Apparently they just get destroyed by the ibises, and that's why nobody's ever seen one. Which brings us to another bizarre entry from bestiaries, the Amphisbina. The Amphisbina was a snake with 2 heads, one on each end, that was later embellished to have 2 legs as well. Alien claims that moving forward or backwards for it was merely a matter of which head served as the head and which the tail, though in the 5th century AD, Nonus embellishes this lovely description with the ability to spit poison from either mouth. Yay! His description also includes a 4-winged eagle carrying the thing. It was claimed to be found in Libya in the bestiaries. My question, of course, is, where is the cloaca? I will let you ponder that for a bit with our modern knowledge of biology and how it works. So now we're starting to move into more positive snake representation. I plan on doing a whole video on the Agathos Daimon later this year or next year, as he is essential to household worship in Hellenism, and his day is an essential day in the Hellenic calendar. Translating to good spirit, it isn't entirely clear if he's a god or just a specific spirit that inhabits each oikos, or home. What is clear is that offering to him was considered essential, as he would guide the head of household in positive decision making. The Agathos Daimon was often depicted as either a youth with very large genitals or a snake, most often the latter. And his favor in your home could lead to fertility, the accumulation of wealth, and other benefits. He was honored on the 2nd day of the lunar month, the day after Numenea, which was when the first sliver of the moon's light became visible after the new moon. He was also associated with Dionysos in his aspect around wine. Often, libations of wine were made before feasts, beseeching the Agathos Daimon to avert the feasters from excess and lead them towards wisdom and enjoyment. And with that, we end our portion on the snakiest of the snakes. The next installment of this series will deal with snake other things hybrids of Greek mythology, including heroes, gorgons, sun titans, and gods, and everybody's favorite 50-headed pupper. Wait, Kerberos is a snake hybrid? What? Yep, if you want to find out more about it, make sure you hit the notification bell loud enough to raise the curites. While you're at it, if you're new here, constrict the subscribe button and hand the like a cloak covered in venom-ridden blood. Drop down into the comments and let me know if I missed any major snakes, or let me know what you were most excited to learn about. Or you could just say I'm a shill for making a listicle about mythology and taking a break from the deep dive emotional content I've been drowning in for months if that's your speed. Special thanks to my patrons. You all voted for this topic this week, and I'll say the research for it was fun, if not exhausting, because as per usual, nothing in Hellenism only needs one video. Your support week in and week out allows me to put in the time that I need to make the deeper content, and your continued support allows me to make fun videos like this one where I dive into some known and lesser known aspects of ancient mythology. May the cycle of reciprocity between us ever remain positive. And remember, we're stronger together.